compass has 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. Well, the 4 cardinal directions are the 4 places, the 4 directions that Jesus takes us when we get on a journey with him as his disciples. When Jesus becomes our master, our teacher, our leader, he leads us into 4 directions. And they are pictures of the 4 dimensions of discipleship. And you see them outlined actually in John 15 as well. So the first one is this, what you could call the movement inward. It's the movement inward. Again, imagine a house. The idea is that God moves into your house. It's not just you're moving into God's house. God moves into your house. And that's what John 14 says. Leading up to John 15, Jesus is speaking with his disciples. And what's he say? He says, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and listen to this, and we will come to them and make our home, meno, with them. We will abide with them. We will move in to your house, your life. So this idea of the first direction is this inward direction, is this idea that God comes in. He comes close. And sometimes we like that, but very often we don't, because what does God do when he moves in? He cleans house, right? I mean, that's what God does. He cleans house. He turns things upside down. And that's what you see here in verses 1 through 6, this imagery of the vine, the pruning. It's this idea of God, the gardener, and he's pruning. He's taking things off that don't belong. And we'll get to that image next week, but continuing with this image of a house, God turns the house upside down. And so in Christian tradition, this inward movement is connected with reflection and transformation, because there's this sense that what we do when we invite God into our houses is we reflect on, and this is what we do in Lent, we reflect on the things that keep God at arm's length, that keep God on the front porch, keep God from coming, moving all the way in, and not just reflect on those things, but do and allow the hard work of inner transformation, because God very often moves things around. We're not the master builder, the master decorator anymore. God is, right? And C.S. Lewis, the great writer, talks about this when he says, imagine yourself living as a house. Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what he's doing. He's getting the drains right, stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you're not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in ways that hurt abominably and does not seem to make any sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation that he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of. Throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he's building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. A beautiful picture, but it also describes like, wow, that's hard. I don't know that I want that. I don't know that I like that. Well, that's the movement inward. Then there's the movement upward. So this movement upward is this movement upward toward God in prayer. So it moves from moving inward, cleaning house, to then moving upward in prayer to God. And the Christians, have imagined this throughout the ages as a house with many floors, kind of like this palace that Lewis is describing here. The mystics described it sometimes as movement of prayer toward God is sort of climbing a ladder of divine ascent. You keep climbing, and you reach a new floor, and a new floor, and a new floor, and the final step they called union with God, when your will is so enmeshed with God's will that you can pray whatever you want and it will be done. That's what Jesus says here, right? Abide with me. My words abide in you. Ask whatever you wish and it will be done. He's describing this movement in prayer that ends with union with God. That's the second move. And then the third movement, this third direction, is the movement among. It's this movement among community, because God doesn't just let us live in a palace with our huge TVs and NBA League Pass, which is awesome, and unlimited Netflix, which is great. I can just sit there and enjoy my happy little house. No, there are actually people in the house. And they're annoying people like you. And they're people who are hard to live with. And they're people that require you to dig deep in life with God to demonstrate the kind of agape love that Jesus talks about here in verse 12. And so you see this in verse 12, the next few verses, this movement toward community among. He says, this is my commandment. You love one another as I have loved you. Greater love is no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. That is the ultimate expression of agape love. That's the third movement. And then the fourth movement is the movement outward, right? So it's not just that our houses are these cozy little lives that are just cut off from the rest of the world. No, he builds our lives right in the middle of a broken down, messed up world where he sends us to be rebuilders of other lives, other homes, to bring about the reality and the goodness of his kingdom right here in our lives and through our lives. And so he goes on the rest of the chapter, starting in verse 16. He says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you what? That you should go. Go. It's the movement outward. Go and bear fruit. And that fruit, your fruit, should abide. So